Hi, everyone. Welcome to our September class in the Living on Lemonade Facebook community. September's topic is water. We're kind of going to do a bit of a deep dive. I'm excited. I kind of put everything together today. I'd already done some research, but I learned a few things. And hey, Christine, and I'm excited to share some of my own knowledge and experience with water and a few things that I learned. Cheers if you've got some water. We'll have a cheers. As always, let's start the class with a few deep breaths. Just kind of check in with yourself, depending on what time of day you are tuning in. If it's the end of the day and you just need to kind of let out the day, this is your opportunity. Hand over heart or both if you need a little extra somatic support. We're going to do 4 big deep breaths, okay? Just make sure those exhales are longer than the inhales. Exhale through the mouth if you need a little extra oomph for it. And check out your shoulders. Make sure they're not up by your ears, tongue off the roof of your mouth, and enjoy. Just imagine kind of washing the day away. If you can just stretch. It's good. Just feel how your body needs to move a little bit. Feel any worries wash away. Just come back to that present moment. If you need a few more breaths, keep going. Go as long as you need. So, water. If you know me well, or we've hung out, or you've had me over to your house and you've offered me a beverage, show of hands in the comments or just to yourself. If you've heard me say the line, I'm okay, thank you. I have my water bottle. I was thinking about that earlier. It's like, I think pretty much everyone who's had me to their house and offered me a beverage, I usually am like, oh, I'm okay, thank you. I have my water because I've been carrying around a reusable water bottle of some sort, not always an Nalgene. I don't think I got an Nalgene until probably like high school, but we used to have these um we had like 2 or 3 of them and we'd take them when we were traveling and stuff, and I started bringing it to school, and I just had one of those like pop-up things, right? She could pop it up and drink from it, and it was smaller. It was probably between 500 and 750 milliliters, but I started bringing it with me every day to school, and it kind of got to a point where if I forgot it at home, I felt like I like forgot a piece of me, like a wallet, or present day would be wallet or keys or cell phone, right? And it's just kind of been a part of me ever since. I don't like to go anywhere without my water because I try to drink a lot. I aim to drink a minimum of 2 liters a day. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes I don't even drink one, but it's always with me. And it's kind of just, it's a bit of a lifeline. And when we kind of take a step back, and I know a theme in my life lately has been kind of connecting to the nature of who we are and how we are nature and the synchronicities and stuff. Water is such a big part of that, right? When we look at the lifespan and the life force of the earth, we wouldn't we wouldn't exist. We cannot survive without water. So if we can just take a moment and just give gratitude and thanks to the the privilege that we have running water, we have access to clean water. Um, I know I try to be mindful of that and not take that for granted because it is a life source, right? So we're going to talk about how we're going to zoom in now. We went out kind of out and it's a part of everything, our existence on this planet and everything else that survives. We need air, we need water, right? We need earth too, but anyway, I digress. Now we're going to zoom in and look closer at our own kind of relationship to water, what it has for us, what it looks like when we have enough water in our body, when we're nourishing ourselves with enough water, what it looks and feels like when we don't and we need more water. We're going to talk about tips to stay hydrated and a couple other things at the end. So we're going to start with our relationship to water and why we need water. Now, a lot of these things you're already going to know, and then we'll kind of maybe jump into it a little bit more, but essentially our body is water makes up 50 to 70% of our body weight. When we look at our brain, 73% of our brain is water. And when we start to get depleted of water, even a 2% loss of water in our brain will start to impair our function. This is how important water is. We are like made up of water. So we need so much of it in order to just function well. Every cell, tissue, and organ needs it to function. Water flushes waste out of our bodies through urinating, sweating, like perspiration, and bowel movements. It helps us to regulate body temperature and blood pressure. There's also evidence that suggests that it can help with metabolism, whether that's kickstarting in the morning by drinking some water first thing when you get up or before a meal. Basically, the points I have here, and I did make points because there's so much to cover and I want to make sure I kind of stay focused, but I also don't want to read too much off the notes because then I get in my head. So I want to be able to give you my experiences and my own thoughts, but also stay on track. So I'm trying to find that balance. Now, 3 things about metabolism. I guess these are more, they can kind of go into this, but also like the tips category. Benefits is when we drink water before a meal, we're going to start to feel a little bit full, right? When you drink even during a meal, if you drink a big glass of whatever, you eat something hot and you have to drink a bunch of milk or whatever, it's going to fill you up faster, right? If we start to feel full, we're going to eat less. So it can help to kind of maintain or help with like weight loss or just meal management, I guess might be the best word. Also, if we drink cold water, our body has to expel more energy to warm it up to body temperature. So that also burns calories. Not sure if it really is going to like break the bank at all in terms of how much you burn in the day, but just to note, when you're drinking cold water, your body has to work harder. So that can be a good or bad thing. I know I personally prefer room temperature. It's just how it's always been. My parents had a distiller, a water distiller growing up. So we just always had a jug under the sink, and that's how I drink it. I drink it like that when it's hot out. I drink it like that when it's cold out. I don't particularly love cold water because I just find I can't drink as much because then I get a brain freeze, right? And it's just kind of more shocking to the system. So that's just my own preference. Also, if you've kind of been following along, and I talk about it in Create Your Calm, like very briefly, if you remember, if you're in that program, the vagus nerve. Now, there's different branches of the vagus nerve through like it's It's related to the parasympathetic nervous system, which is your rest and digest. So it helps to kind of like bring you back down into a state of symbiosis and balance after you've been activated. There's 3 branches to it. One of them, which I very, very briefly mentioned, the enteric nervous system, that has to do with digestion, but it wasn't really part of that course. So it's something, as I dive deeper and learn more about, it's going to be integrated into some of my teachings. What I can tell you is that part of the vagus nerve kind of highway, that, from my understanding, if I'm understanding this correctly, the part that kind of goes through our digestive tract, it's always communicating things from our organs back up to our brain and helping to release hormones so that we're getting what we need depending on what we're doing. And what I was reading today is when we start to eat or drink and our stomach starts to expand, it gets bigger, right? And it pushes pressure on that nerve, and the nerve tells the brain, it starts sending signals up for the brain to then send signals down so that we feel full. Now, I remember growing up, I heard it takes like 20 minutes. What I read today is it can be up to 30. So it just depends maybe on your body makeup, what you're eating, how fast you're eating. Well, I guess not really how fast, because I don't think that's really relevant, but because that's what it's based on. But essentially, it's encouraging us to eat slower, because either way we're going to get that feeling of fullness. But if we eat a bunch really fast, by the time it actually kicks in, because it's a delayed response, we're going to feel really full. So if we eat slower, we'll end up satiated without overeating. And water, because it would expand the stomach, can start to send that signal. There's something else that I'm going to get into a little bit that kind of like brings us back here in terms of how water, hunger and thirst. So stay with me. Other ways that why we need water: it carries nutrients and oxygen to our cells. It prevents constipation, as we know. Cushions and lubricates joints. Protects our organs and tissues. It maintains our electrolyte balance. So when we start to get really dehydrated, especially if we're exerting ourselves, whether it's hot out, we are exercising, that's when we have to also be mindful of getting that sodium back into our bodies to replenish those electrolytes, because electrolytes help with brain function and all kinds of things, right? We also need water to burn fat. So if we are trying to lose weight, we need water as part of that process. Now, how much water do we need to drink per day? You've probably heard 8 cups a day, right? Oh, Christine, I forgot to grab a glass. Anyway, I've got my 1 liter bottle. I do have another glass that is roughly 500 milliliters, so it's half that, but I don't want to run out to the kitchen and make you wait. If you have a glass at home and you're curious, like if you have like a liter bottle, or use your measuring cup, see how many milliliters are in that glass that you like to use, your favorite glass, right? And then you have an idea. 8 glasses is kind of a generalization. There's lots more to it, right? How much water we consume or need to consume to kind of maintain a healthy existence is dependent on our gender. So males tend to need more water than females. Our size and weight, of course, how big we are, our level of activity, how much are we exerting ourselves in a day? What type of work are we doing? Do we have an active job? Because that's gonna be different than if we're sitting at a desk, right? Health conditions. Do we have any health conditions, or are we on any medications that influence water retention, or are we on meds that keep us flushing water out, right? I know one of my grandmothers, she had fluid retention in her ankles and stuff because she had congestive kind of heart stuff. So she was on medication. She was on, and my grandpa was on one too. They just called it a water pill, right? And they take it in the morning with breakfast or whatever. And then they couldn't really go too far for the next while because it would be like flushing out their bladder. They would keep trying to flush out water retention. So if we're losing water that way, um, what's the temperature in the room or outside where you're at, the ambient temperature? If it's hot, you're going to need more water. Uh, Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding also need more water. So there's different factors that go into how much water we need in a day, essentially. Now it's roughly 15.5 cups or 3.7 liters for men and 11.5 cups or 2.7 liters for women. That's almost 3 liters. Like I feel good if I get 2 in. But and that is based on a healthy adult in a temperate climate. So not too hot, not too cold, not too damp, not too dry. So just kind of like a baseline climate. One thing to be mindful of, roughly 20% of our water intake comes from food sources, right? So we don't have to rely on like drinking 3 liters of water every day. We can also build that into our diet. There's lots of fruits and vegetables that are high in water. Look at watermelon, celery, lettuce, spinach. There's tons of fruits and vegetables. Milk is a source. Tea, especially if you have like unsweet, add lots to it, right? Because um, it kind of just it's like getting a treat, but without all the extra stuff. If you're not putting a lot of sugar or flavors into it. Coffee as well. Coffee is also a diuretic, but you do get a water source from it. I have written here, avoid sugary drinks as they add to your caloric count. Yes, you're getting liquids, but it's almost like eating it through drinking, right? If that makes sense. So just be mindful of that. There's other ways to get your liquids into you without adding all the calories that you could get from nutrition, like from what you're eating. But that's not to say you can't enjoy some beverages, right? I love my lemonade. So yeah. Now, next we're going to talk about dehydrated, like hydrated versus dehydrated, what that looks like in our body, how it can make us feel, and then we'll kind of go from there. So we'll start with dehydrated. Dehydration, when we start to feel dehydrated, we can have headaches. One thing I learned is I feel like when I started researching this all, I was really thinking like, wow, I've really kind of learned a lot of little tips and tricks along the way. I think my sister taught me this one I'm about to talk about. And, like people have just taught me things along the way that have just stuck and they've just become practices or things I'm mindful of. Now, I remember my sister saying like with headaches, to, it might be a dehydration headache. So I'm kind of, and I've talked about this before. I'm very in tune with my body. I have a very good relationship with my body. I pick up on things really quickly. But I've been building that over my lifetime. And I have a pretty good idea, depending on where the headache is, what the source is. So if I slept wrong and I have like a tension headache, it's going to be like in one area or like down the back into that. I think it's the trapezius, like the shoulder, right? Because my shoulder gets tense, causes headaches. Dehydration headaches tend to be like here. So what I'll do is when I start to get that headache, it's dull. I'll drink some water and I'll just let it sit because I don't want to take Advil if I don't have to. So I'll drink a bunch of water and then like wait a little bit. And hey, Lindsay. And also I have a little plugged in Norwex, but it is so helpful. I have my roller. So that will help topically sometimes with headaches if it's a little achy but not like super deep. So I'll use that a little bit in conjunction with drinking water. And then I wait a while. Is my body just asking me to replenish? Because when we don't have enough water, hormones get disrupted, and then it causes blood vessels to constrict, and that's what a headache is, right? It's your blood vessels constricted. You need the water, you need the moisture, you need the hydration to open them up so they can function properly, and then you're pain free. And as much as it's uncomfortable, when we can start to have this awareness of how our body communicates with us, because our body's always in communication with us, we just aren't taught how, or even to at all, to have that kind of back and forth of like, "Ooh, I'm noticing this. What is that about?" I was talking to Christine earlier about like how when we're around babies, I don't have children of my own, but I've taken care of babies, and I know from like asking friends about their experiences and stuff, when you have like an intimate relationship with a baby and you're their caregiver, they have different cries, right? Like, you get to know their cries. You know if it's a diaper change cry, or if it's a sleepy, like they're tired or overtired, or if they're in pain, they've got colic or gas or what. You start to understand those different things, and we can do that within ourselves. And I think that's such a is something I really want to teach more about, because it really kind of cracks open, it actually bursts open a door to this whole new world where we can start to build on that. But a lot of the foundation comes within just really understanding our own bodies and being in relationship with it. So to keep going, dehydration can look like dizziness, a racing heart, lack of energy, irritability. So when I was reading about irritability, and we're going to connect it a little bit to that hunger thing, it can shift our blood pressure and stuff like that, right? So, we can it can change a lot of the hormone output, and we can feel like we're hungry, but we're really thirsty. By the time you feel thirst, you're already dehydrated. So that's another thing I learned. Drink when you're not even thirsty yet. Because by the time you're thirsty, that's again your body being like, hello, we need some. So we need to be proactive and be drinking regularly so we don't even have to experience that. Because by the time we're thirsty, we're already dehydrated. It's already saying, like, hey, we need some. We can feel confused. We feel thirsty, less frequent urination, or the color is darker. That's a big one. Check your pee. I mean, sounds like TMI, but I do. I'm like, okay, I'm well hydrated right now. It's like a light yellow or clear. Um, we can get dry mouth, as we know, dry lips, constipation, of course. We need water to help us expel our waste. Dry eyes, nausea. We can feel nausea through dehydration. Also, bad breath, because when our mouth gets dry, we have less saliva, which means that bacteria can grow. It can we can have an bacterial overgrowth, right? We can also have dry skin, or we can have flushed skin. Now, the flushed skin would be more related to if we have like a heat event, if we've been out in the sun and we've been sweating, um, we're sweating a bit. And then it gets even worse when we get past that point that our body can no longer self-regulate through sweating. And then we start to overheat, right? So the external heat can influence us, make us dehydrated, and then cause a whole other what's the word? Plethora of issues, which we don't need to get into. Muscle cramps can be from dehydration. Oftentimes, muscle cramps is we need electrolytes, right? You can have a little bit of salt. Um, I learned when I was a kid, potassium, especially because I would have like wicked growing pains because I'm 5'10", I'm tall, and I would go through these stretches and just like have wicked growing pains, especially my legs. And I would eat a banana because it has potassium. So it's kind of like starting to understand what might be going on when we're feeling these symptoms and what we need naturally, what our body's telling us that it needs. So if we're feeling cramps and we're not growing anymore, we're probably dehydrated. We probably need some electrolytes or a little bit of salt. Let's see here. We can have food cravings, especially sweet. So I have written here, organs need water to release glycogen, which is stored glucose, sugar. It needs, our body will access that and use it for energy. So when we start to get dehydrated, our body doesn't have that direct access to what we need to have energy and just feel good, so we can start feeling tired, and it can start craving the sweets because it actually needs water to have access to the sweet, the glucose that we have in our body. So this is where we can start to get a little bit confused with, am I actually hungry or am I thirsty? Do I need water to hydrate me so that my body can access its own glucose? And with whatever I'm exerting myself with, or whatever, just going through the day, I need more access to energy within myself, or am I actually hungry? That might be an interesting one. Let me know in the comments if that one's a new one, because I thought that was super cool and I learned that a few years ago. Loss of appetite, we can feel that too. We can also feel an intolerance to heat. Now, switching gears here, what does it look and feel like when we're hydrated, when we're getting enough water? For one, we're not going to feel thirst because we're quenching it. We're satiated. Like I said before, our urine's going to look like lemonade or a light yellow or clear. We also will have reactive skin elasticity. So, a little test. You can put your hand flat. You're just going to do a pinch. See this, the skin on the knuckle? You're going to pinch it like that. If it reacts fairly quickly and drops down, you're hydrated. If it kind of tents up, like TENTS, like a tent, if it kind of stays like that, then you need to hydrate. So it's cool when we start to learn these little things and ways to kind of interact with our body, right? And it's like, oh, we can just take a quick test. There's one about the circulation, fingernails. I also was told, and I don't know if I can substantiate it, but if you lower your eyelids and it's really like white, if it's not red, then it can be a iron deficiency. But like, don't quote me on it because it could be like a wives' tale. But actually, it'll be something I'll have to look up. Anyway, it's cool when we start to kind of learn these things, because then you can do a check-in in just different ways, right? Um, when you're exercising, you have like a reasonable recovery time afterwards. You're not just like struggling for the rest of the day. You can kind of bounce back and get back to whatever you're doing. Your stool's going to be soft, right? I know it sounds like TMI, but these are things to look out for. It's just simple, right? It's our own biology. Our body's sending us signals. If it's hard and difficult to pass, we're constipated, we definitely need more water. If it's like pebbly and not binding together, we need more fiber. So I do actually pay attention to that. It's like, is it together and is it soft? Otherwise, like, do I need more water? Do I need more fiber? Easy peasy, right? It's easy, it's simple ways to know what your body needs. You also have that healthy skin glow, right? You won't have like as much, your skin won't be as dry. You'll have more energy because your body is working optimally, right? It has access to that glucose in your body to exert as energy and convert to energy and stuff. And you'll just be happier because your hormones are more balanced. So these are some of the benefits and the reasons why it's so important to drink lots of water. Now I'm going to take a quick break and drink some water, as I do often in my teachings, right? All right, we'll keep moving. Tips to stay hydrated. Drink water before, during, and after exercise. Now, if I'm doing like a HIIT training, I kind of just have sips as I go, because if you drink too much and you're like doing whatever, you can get cramps, right? Because then your body does that anaerobic. Um, I forget what it's called. My brain's kind of blanking, but just be mindful. You need a little sip. I'll just grab a little sip in between um sets. I guess that's the word. If you're thirsty, don't wait till you're thirsty. like I said before. And I also mentioned listen to your body. Hunger might be thirst. So, one way that you can work with that is when you're feeling hungry, check in with yourself too, right? Like have that awareness of like when is the last time I ate? If it's noon and you haven't eaten yet today, you're probably hungry. Right? But if it hasn't been that long and you're feeling hungry, get curious. I feel like I'm a curiosity coach. Or a curiosity teacher or whatever you want to call me, but I really I I stress, there's a different word I want to use, but the importance of getting curious about like everything that's going on. Drink some water, wait like 15, 20 minutes, see if you feel satiated. If you're still hungry, yeah, then get a bite to eat. But yeah, just have that awareness. Like, when was the last time I ate? Do I think maybe I am hungry? Have I been exerting myself? Is it hot? Those things. Like, just take it all into account. But don't assume that you're hungry. You could be thirsty. Um, swap out high calorie drinks with water. So just again, being more mindful of what intake you have. And one thing I learned when I was a kid from this wise woman named Natalia is to start your day with a glass of water. Let that be like the first thing you do when you wake up. Because when you think about it, if we're getting our, 7, 8 hours sleep, maybe 9, we're going that long without water, right? So by the time we wake up, like our mouth's dry, we're probably have a full bladder, so we got to exert that or expel that. Our body, like, it needs some water. It's been a few hours. So it's not a bad thing to just like that's one of the first things you do is just like get that water in you. It's going to kickstart all those processes and start to replenish that reserve. And if this metabolism thing checks out, I know there's lots of research that's kind of working with that to substantiate it. It's already kind of kickstarting your metabolism, right? Because it's expanding that belly, getting that vagus nerve activated. And the vagus nerve is with the parasympathetic, that rest and digest state, when you're in that state, it means it's safe to digest your food. So you do want to activate your vagus nerve so that your body can function optimally, right? Because when you're in fight or flight, it inhibits digestion because you don't need it if you're trying to flee. It's just not your body has to prioritize other things. Um, I came across this. It's essentially like what Natalia taught me with just drinking a glass of water first thing in the morning, and it's called Japanese water therapy. And it's drinking water on an empty stomach after waking up. It says that it helps rehydrate after sleep, kickstarts metabolism, and helps improve digestion. So it has a name apparently. Um, Always keep water with you. Have it handy so you're not having to go out of your way. If you need it, to have it. And you can make it more interesting. If you get bored with water, make it more interesting. Put cucumbers in, put fruits, like whatever can kind of spice it up a little bit. I will give you a caution. I was putting like lemon juice or whatever in my water for a while. My dentist cautioned me because it's fine. Like, say if you want to start your day with like a glass of lemon water, have at her, but drink it all at once. Drink whatever portion you want to have, drink it kind of in one go, because if you are like I was having lemon juice in my water, just my big water bottle for the day, um it's acidic, right? And if we're constantly exposing our teeth to it, it can start to break down the enamel. So you just want to be careful of that if you are adding lemon to your water. I've heard great things about lemon water, that it's great for kickstarting our metabolism and stuff, but just make sure that you're not having that slow kind of exposure to the enamel on like to your teeth because it can break down that enamel. So just be mindful of that. Learn from my I I don't think it's really a mistake. I guess kind of a mistake, but just learn from my experience. Um, I kind of mentioned before, sugar-free tea, kind of keep it simple, but add a little, zhuzh to your water essentially. You're just having it in a different form. eat lots of produce, so then you're getting water that way too, and you don't have to feel so like overwhelmed or pressured to drink so much water in the day. Um, and also, if you're having a night out, or you're having some alcoholic beverages, make sure to drink water while you're consuming alcohol too. I'm going to talk about that shortly because it is, or perhaps next, we're doing well. Yeah, we're doing well. Um, it'll reduce your chance of a hangover essentially. So, speaking of hangovers, let's talk about water and alcohol, or alcohol and dehydration. I'm going to explain it a little bit. Let's get a little nerdy. For anyone who likes to drink alcohol, whatever that may be. Alcohol is a diuretic, just like coffee. So what it does is it increases your urine output, which means extra fluid loss, which can equal dehydration over time, right? Um, when this happens kind of naturally, when we're having fluid loss, say we're sweating or overexerting ourselves, our pituitary gland, which is just like teeny tiny, I think it's like a pin or something, it's super small. It's kind of like, when I think of the pituitary gland, I think of it as like the, what's the right word? It's like the powerhouse of a lot of our hormone, um, like kind of like the control center. The thyroid does a lot of that stuff too. But the pituitary gland kind of, I think it comes online when we hit puberty. So it has all its own functions. Anyway, one of the ways that it functions is when our body is starting to be depleted of fluids, our pituitary gland tries to compensate this by releasing ADH. That stands for anti-diuretic hormone. So it's like, oh God, we got to conserve, we got to conserve. So it sends out this hormone that is meant to reduce urination. Now, when we drink, alcohol inhibits ADH production. So as much as our body's like, oh no, we're losing water, um, it's like, nah, sorry, it blocks it. So we're drinking alcohol, it's a diuretic, we're starting to pee. You know, when you get to the point, there's you break the seal, right? There's a whole saying around it. You're drinking and you get up, it's like, I gotta go break the seal, and then it just seems like it's a thing after, right? Um, but that's the diuretic working, increasing fluid output or urine output. Body cannot even combat it because the alcohol inhibits ADH, or yeah, ADH. Funny little story about me. I don't know if I've ever really told anyone this, but I learned about ADH in grade 11 or 12 biology because we learned about hormones and stuff. Anyway, I have had a couple moments when I was in like my early 20s, when you just like, especially when you're younger and you're just partying and then you go to the bathroom and you're with a bunch of people, and then you like, you step to have some privacy to go to the bathroom, and you're kind of like with your thoughts, and sometimes like that's when you could sometimes realize like just how inebriated or whatever you are. um I have had the thought before, and because I'm observant, when I see my pee is clear, I'm like, oh, my body is no longer making ADH because I'm drinking alcohol. Because I knew that it inhibits the ADH. So I've made that observation before when I've been drinking, which is like super nerdy and geeky and all the things, but I think it's funny, so I want to share. So hopefully it gives you a giggle. Because it's blocking the ADH, we're continuing the urine output, right? So the more we do, and the less we can replenish because we're drinking alcohol and not water, we're eventually going to become dehydrated. And like I said before, dehydration equals restricted blood vessels equals headaches equals hangover, right? When we wake up that next morning and we're feeling dreadful, a lot of it's caused, I mean, there's the alcohol too, and it's really hard on your liver and stuff, but just from like a water standpoint, it's super, super hard on the body because then it just our body doesn't even have a chance to replenish itself unless we're drinking water. So if you're trying to enjoy a beverage and not have a hangover the next morning, try like a 1 for 1. Drink a glass of water with your beverage. It's also going to extend the time it takes kind of between drinks too. So if you're trying not to get super drunk, um, because if you're drinking a glass of water after alcoholic beverage, you're going to be fuller, right? So then you're not going to be drinking as much alcohol either. So you're helping yourself by hydrating in like more ways than one. Um, to kind of like go a little bit of a different direction as we kind of finish up here. Looks like I'm doing well for time. Let me know if there's any questions or comments. Right now I only have the one comment that I'm seeing, but if you still if it's still working, let me know. And if you have any questions or any remarks, I do love to interact when I'm on lives. I did want to say like a couple things that are move away from kind of the biology and physiology of water and in our day-to-day life and move a little bit into like the spiritual realm for those who are curious. Just things to things to get curious about. For most of my life, I kind of kept these types of things under wraps because I'm like, people are going to think I'm weird. Uh, we're going to think I'm crazy. I can't talk about these things unless I know that they're open to it. And what I've come to realize is just like, I don't know, I just need to show up as me. And I I grew up with lots of different modalities as kind of like the norm, right? Outside of just Western philosophy. And I think that as you know, I just spent 40 minutes talking about science and biology. I'm super interested in that. I don't think it's the be all end all though. So I that's why I stay open to other things. And there's topics that I'm interested in, have been all my life that only recently is science starting to kind of catch up with and see from that lens. So I do believe that just because things aren't necessarily accepted in the Western lens of things doesn't mean they never will be. Sometimes it just takes a little while to catch up or whatever, or it's just not a topic or area of interest until it is, right? So that's why I keep an open mind, take what you want, leave the rest. If you find it interesting, super cool. Like do your research. I always encourage people, don't take what I say as like the gospel ever. But I like to introduce different topics, ways of thinking, understanding, so that if it's something that like, whoo, kind of hits and you're like, oh, that's cool, you can go down the rabbit hole because I so appreciate when people have shared those different things with me that have piqued my interest. And then I go off and do my own research, right? And decide if it's for me and how deep I want to go with it. So one kind of like idea that I don't know any science around it, but in the kind of like spiritual world, especially when we're talking about like connecting to the earth and just kind of like coming back to the nature, like our own nature. A lot of people talk about how grounding water is. Not only drinking it, but being immersed in it, whether it's a bath, whether it's a pool, whether it's jumping in a lake, whether it's floating in a lake or an ocean. And I can attest to that. I am so drawn to water. Um, I've always been drawn to water. I'm like a water baby. Like we swim off the boat and Eric's got a, there was one time we were with friends before we bought our original Maverick. We're on the Maverick, but our friend still owned it. And my nephew was in the water with me and he kind of swam back to the platform and I'm just still like in the water and Eric's like he's basically like calling me in like I'm a kid because I'm just like I turn into I don't know, just like a child a little bit when I'm in water. I love water so much. One of my very favorite things in life is to float on my back in water. When I swim lengths, it's how I end my swimming practice. I float on my back and I stretch. I stretch my limbs and I just relax and I love it. I take some big deep breaths and I find water, it's like home in a way. And it's when you think about it, like if we're 50 to 70% water, there is like just like a resonance there, right? Because it's like it's part of us. And whether or not we're just like drinking it to kind of replenish and then feel whole again because it's helping to create that I'm losing words, I guess it's getting late, equilibrium in our body. There's just um there's just a magic to it that I don't know how aware we are, right? But when we can really kind of get curious and start to notice, like there's something magical about water. So my one of my intuitive mentors, she before we do practices or she recommends, I know she does it, I do it now. Before I like tap into my intuition, before I go into meditation and just like really just connect back into my body and see what wisdom I get, I always drink water because she's like, drink water before your practice. It helps to ground you. And I'm like, okay. So again, I don't know if there's any science to it, but it works well for me. Um, and yeah, I love floating on my back. Last thing, Christine, I'll read your question in just a sec here. Um, there's this book called The Hidden Messages in Water. Now, this is probably an entirely new concept to many, if not most of you. It is not definitely not like science supported, but I think it's a really cool concept. I would love to see more research done on it. So essentially, Masaru Emoto, this is if you're watching live, if you're listening to the podcast, you can look him up. His name is Masaru, Masaru, if I'm saying that right. Last name Emoto, Emoto. He's Japanese or was Japanese. He did research with, he would freeze water and then look at the crystals under a microscope, and he would essentially like expose it to different things and then look at the makeup of the crystals, and he had different results depending on if it was um exposed to like positive affirmations and the like, or if it was like negative talk. um it's just a really cool book, or just look them up. Just like type in Google like the hidden messages in water, and I'm sure there's just YouTube videos and all sorts of things. You don't have to buy the book, but if that makes you curious how water reacts to basically external kind of stimulus or intentions, because if you're just kind of saying words to it, like how do you describe that? But anyway, he had some really interesting results. So if you're kind of into the realm of curiosity around that, check it out. It's super cool. um anyway, so that's it for my content. Now Christine's asking, did you come across any information on whether or not to drink water right before bed? Ooh, I did not read anything about that. I personally try not to drink too close to bedtime because then I'm gonna have to get up in the night, right? Because the bladder fills. I do. It's kind of for me, it's one of those balances where like I want to make sure it hasn't been a while, but I don't want to drink a big glass. That's I'm curious about that. So I'm gonna be looking up that. And I'd also be interested, like over a long stretch, are there any studies or information on like does that affect then how your bladder um functions as you age, right? Dependent on how much water you drink kind of before bed, and how, because then it has to perform all night. If you drink a big glass of water before bed and you're sleeping for hours, whether or not you get up in the night, your bladder has to hold that for whatever length of time, right? So speaking of emptying bladders, um another thing I learned as a kid, I don't know if anyone else has this, but it was drilled into my brain long as I can remember since I was potty trained. Going to the bathroom was the last and first thing that I do every day. Right before bed, I brush my teeth, I go to the bathroom, and go to bed. Maybe lots of other people do that too, so cool. But it is like the first thing I do in the morning too. I get up, I go to the bathroom. That's and what I find really interesting, and I'm sure my parents didn't know this at the time, 'cause they're telling me this like back in the early 90s or mid 90s. Um, with the learning that I'm doing about the nervous system and deepening my awareness of the importance to have that interaction and that relationship with your body, because the more that we can kind of be in conversation or like a back and forth with the signals that our body gives us and honor those that it's so weird to say conversation, but I can't I the information I guess that it's giving us, right? Our body is always giving us information. And if we're listening and replying and honoring, um, that helps to create more nervous system capacity, because our body physiologically is our needs are being met in a physiological way. So when you kind of have that foundation, then you can start to it broadens the capacity. So one of the things is, and I was talking about it earlier actually with you, Christine, at work, when our body gives us a signal, so like go to the bathroom, or even like gas, if we have gas, when we're holding it in, like our body's like, what are you doing? Like you gotta let it out, right? So there's like there's a wisdom that our body has, and it has these functions for a reason. So if we're not honoring our own physiology, it does affect our nervous system, right? So we have to be aware of these things. We have to drink when before we're thirsty, because by the time we're thirsty, it's screaming at us. We got to eat when we need to. We got to go to the bathroom when we need to, and don't hold it in. I mean, there's times you just got to hold it in, right? But as much as you can, if you feel that urge to go to the bathroom, go to the bathroom. If you got to go down the hall and like pass some gas, whatever, let it out. Do the things that your body's asking you to do. So that's why, when I started learning this, I was like, cool. That was my parents didn't even I should ask my mom, like, what was your thought process around that? And I remember my dad like specifically grilling in. Obviously, I can't ask him now, but it was just like it was always very important. Empty your bladder before bed and when you first get up. So water, 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 make sure you got lots of it, and I'm gonna look that up, Christine. I think that's a really great question, and I'm gonna find an answer for you. So maybe I'll pop it in the comments or do like a follow-up post. Um, I hope this was informational. People enjoyed it. If there's Are there any questions before we kind of pop off here and finish for the evening? Any aha moments, anything that you want to take away with you? I'd be happy to hear. Pop them in the comments or just send me a message, whatever. I love having that back and forth, and especially when it's a topic that I am passionate about. It's helpful, right? It's nice to be able to take like a big concept and kind of bring it inwards and just make it really practical, lots of tips and tricks and tools so that you can start to build that body awareness and have a better relationship and just conscious awareness of your body. And water is one way to do it. So thank you for hanging out with me tonight. The next thing inside of here will be September 30th, Soul Care Hour, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And I think that's it right now. I'll have to start looking at October, see what's up. If you have any ideas or requests for subject matter that you want me to talk about, let me know. I'd be happy to do some research. I love researching. I love learning. I am a student of life, and I have some things in the work. There's a program that I ran in the spring that I'm going to be delivering again this fall. So I have to get that lined up. Yeah, I hope everyone's doing well. Sending you hugs if you need one. And any questions, reach out, say hi if it's been a while. and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.